if you're like me, that one person there is like me in that regard. Soda in this container that is about as tart and tangy and grapefruiterific as you're going to find anywhere. That's right. Florida's natural red ruby grapefruit. And poured in, because I only had like this much left, right? Of grapefruit juice. And a 12-ounce can of Shasta Zaz, which is their fruit soda, which doubled the grapefruit. I am live. You too, Clouds will cover live. You're alive. You're learning to love. You're living to live. Each of us all the time learns to love and lives to live. The grapefruit juice is not sweet. It's a very tangy beverage I've got here. If you enjoy a high ratio of tang to sip, you'd enjoy this beverage. If you're anti-tang, well, there's a lot of tanginess to this. I don't know if you're going to handle it. And a lot of people can handle this kind of level of tang. Tangy. That's how you've attained a high level of tang. Of tangy, like that. Hello, Jerry like the mouse. How are you this evening? What kind of shoes are you wearing? Are you wearing Nikes? Are you wearing Adidas? Are you wearing loafers? Flip-flops? Sandals? Potato clogs? Clown shoes? Are you a professional clown? Remember, all professional clowns have to choose an identity, either sad or a happy clown. There are only two emotions. What kind of shoes are you wearing, Adrian Bartlett? Are you wearing flats, high heels? What other kind of women's shoes are there? Pumps? Did I say pumps already? No, I didn't. I said flats. Flats, pumps, high heels. Hi, Zandy. We are doing fine this evening. I have taken the painting into the house along with your address, where it will soon be wrapped up and put in the mail. And the thing that slowed us down a little bit was suggested that this is a typical thing of kind of shit that happens, right? I suggested, well, why don't we use the Cricut to play, hi Jessica Moore, to print to it, because it'll draw on a piece of paper for you. It doesn't have to cut things out. It'll also, it functions like a printer if you put a pen in there. Except, of course, what had we done last time we had used that function? We had left the pen in there with the cap off, so it was all dried out. And of course, the Cricut's got these things designed so the only pen that really fits in there is their $9 pen. I'm quite certain, Zandy, that behavior on your part is not worthy of feeling shame over. So anyways, what was I talking about a second ago? Oh yeah, that thing. So okay, so I said, well, let's have it write the address. It looks all neat and tidy and stuff, you know. Of course, our pen was right out. So then we decided to look through all of our regular pens and see if there was any pens that we already had that would also fit in that thing. Of course, we found no such pens that would fit in there. And then we went to dinner, and then after dinner, we decided to go to Big Lots to look for a pen. And we didn't find any pens there either that were any better than the ones we had at home, because we have tons of pens here. They designed the thing so it's like not any pen you normally can get. But we bought an adapter online that's getting shipped to us for $9 that is made for the Cricut thing. It's probably not made by Cricut, but it lets you put any kind of pen in there. Jordan Spike, hello, what's going on with you? AKA, how are you? Well, what's going on with me is I'm feeling pretty good, having a good evening. I'm drinking some grapefruit juice with grapefruit soda mixed into it for a double grapefruit whammy. And I enjoyed making the videos today with Jack and with Becky, respectively. And I was watching I watched the whole Becky one, and then I was watching the Jack one. And the Jack one I had a little issue with the audio in there. My mic was a lot louder because the reason I realized it was like that is because during that stretch, normally I'm stereo micing the thing like I am now, right? I got two mics going. They're both turned all the way up. This one could probably be turned down a little bit. But the thing is, it balances out the sound a lot. And so it doesn't need compression as badly as it does normally. So as a consequence, without compression, with just one mic plugged in during that stretch time, it was super peaky. Anywho, I'm not sure what do you think is redundant. My second penis? It is a little redundant, but, I'm not going to think it's redundant when the first one falls off. Yeah. You got to balance your grapefruit juice with a little grapefruit soda occasionally. Is that what you're trying to say? Depression equals death of the happy train? Well, hopefully it doesn't die. Hopefully it just is broken down. Are you allergic? Are you or Kim allergic to honey? No, we both enjoy honey. We use honey around here. We love local honey. We love shit like that, I may be an ENTP, but I spent my whole life around SFJs. Like my mom was an ISFJ, and my main wife that I had for the longest chunk of time was an ESFJ, and Kimberly was an ISFJ. So I've gotten very comfortable with enjoying SFJ shit like that too. And I guess, we'll enjoy a lot of SFJ shit. Let's see. Shoes. Shoes are redundant? Sandy, we're asking a big question of everybody who's coming around tonight, so I'll ask you as well, and Jerry like the mouse too. What kind of shoes are you wearing? Now, I've thrown out some possibilities for everybody. Nikes, Adidas's, or for ladies, maybe they're wearing flats or pumps or high heels or flip-flops, sandals, whatever. I'm trying to determine what kind of shoes people are wearing. I will be the first to share tonight. I'm wearing hiking boots. I'm wearing these hiking boots right here. These are Columbia brand hiking boots. Jordan, what kind of shoes are you wearing? I'm going to guess Jordan is wearing maybe loafers. Black Nikes. Okay. Doc Martens. Now that's a heavy shoe, Rowan. You must be trying to build up your calf strength. Is that correct? Is that your goal there? I'm sure you have a TE frame for this, right? Let's see. Planet Catcher, I'm wearing a Joker sock and a Jack Skellington sock. Those are not shoes. Okay, well, how was I supposed to know you were inside? Huh? How was I supposed to know that? I don't have a Find My iBecky app on my phone. Your shoes collection is embarrassing? Why? Because you only have 3 shoes? That makes 1.5 pairs? That is kind of embarrassing. Oh, too many shoes. You're like Imelda Marcos. Are you familiar with Imelda Marcos? famous for having a lot of shoes. I left my stilts on my other shoes. Well, then you're never going to escape the tuberculosis epidemic. Obviously. Next time you'll use a semicolon. That'll be quite an adventure for you. You're going to adventure all the way into the land of semicolons. If you want to go, take that kind of risk, be that kind of controversial in your punctuation, you go for it, Becky. I'm not sure I'm willing to take those kind of chances with something as important as a live chat comment on Technical Fantasy live stream. That's going to be how people know who you are for the rest of your life. You're going to think, she's that girl who said that thing in the live chat. And you're going to be stuck with that. It's going to be a mantle of stone around your neck. So be careful before you go prancing off in the land of semicolons. Hey, quit simming my colon. I want both dots, please. No, I don't want your little curvy line. Get it out of here. Shoes are like trains. You can have one, but without the other parts, it doesn't look right. That analogy is like a glass of milk, strangely related entirely to the thing you're trying to express. Getting tears. Too masculine to think about shoes. So do you just have dirt on your feet? Just mud caked bricks on your feet? That's pretty manly. Or do you have like a tiger's jaw? Like on each foot you got a jaw of a wild animal that was trying to bite your foot, but you just jerked your foot and you ripped its head off and you just left it there as your new shoe. That's a pretty impressive way to get shoes. Pretty impressive pair of shoes, really. You get like a couple of grizzly bear heads on each foot, one on each foot. Cause I'm covered in the blood of my young. That'd be good lyrics to put in a song. It's like super cheerful and bright, you know. Not seeing men act like girls over shoes. Jordan is barefoot right now, but you have your trusty New Balance. Oh, sometimes Vans when you're feeling counterculture. Or when you're either feeling counterculture or decided to ride a skateboard. I'd rock some wolf pets. Wolf pets? You mean pet wolves that just stand underneath your feet? You can claim they're your shoes. You just walk around with you balancing on them. That's a good idea. I like that one. Or you want wolf pelts? I like your wolf pets idea a lot better. I like the idea that you got two wolf pets that are like skis, kind of. Ski wolves, we'll call them. I've bred and raised this variety of wolf to be ski wolves for over 40 generations now, and as you can see, I managed to breed it. So yeah, they're getting pretty good, and their feet are getting broader. You know, you can see I'm breeding a subspecies of this that is going to end up being like a snowplow kind of with a big scoop on the front of it. So yeah, those are my plans later tonight. I was going to start breeding wolves, try to fulfill Angantir's vision. Hard to say whether I'll follow through on that plan, but that's my plan currently. Here's another analogy. Cows are like scythes. Both go on a farm. That's true. You're correct about that one. That's a pretty good observation. I'm feeling like silly, giddy tonight. I think it has to do with I feel a lot of relief after talking with Becky earlier. It's already making a huge impact in my life. Like just dealing with Kimberly like shortly after that conversation when we were done, Becky, I went outside and she immediately, one of her parts came out and started in on shit. And I just responded very differently. And I realized, oh yeah, that's not about me at all. It's like a ghost, you know. Am I gonna let, if the ghosts aren't actually doing anything to me, like they aren't throwing pots and pans in my head and shit, then, and the only power that I have them is by being offended by their presence and expecting them to leave my house, then my best choice is just to realize the ghosts aren't scary. They're just ghosts, and they're not about me anyway. And once I accepted that simple reality that this is not her core self, this is her defense mechanism, then it makes it really easy to try to remember my core self responds either compassionately, acceptingly, or curiously. It's not going to be the third one, but you know, yeah, I feel a shit ton better. I feel like I actually have a meaningful approach that I can actually attain results for myself, if anything. What I guess feels most liberating about it is I take them off when I drive stick shift. I wear flip-flops all the time, but I take them off when I drive stick. I just leave them. I just drive barefoot. Anyway, I realize, oh, I don't have to endure all these emotions, you know? Like, I don't have to, I used to think I've only got two choices here. I either got to try to do something, you know, or emotionally detach. And I guess in some sense, that's what I'm doing still, is detaching, but it's a different kind of detachment. I'm not going to care about this person. Instead, I'm saying, that's not this person. And that's an incredibly powerful bit of narrative to apply. Because all of a sudden, if that's not Kimberly, there's no reason to get mad at Kimberly. And if that's not Kimberly's true self, because it's not compassionate, accepting, and or curious, then, well, for one thing, it means basically like all the parts of Kimberly that I don't like aren't Kimberly anymore. It's like a great arbitrary rhetorical device. It's like Christian forgiveness, you know. Another great rhetorical device that says, if you can humble yourself enough to ask for forgiveness for your wrongdoings, then presumably you both have some understanding of what it means to do wrong, namely the impacts that you have imposed upon others that are negative in some regard. And you also have a willingness to be humble enough to say, okay, well, this is my shortcoming, and I can't change the past, but I can have the right attitude about it and resolve to do better in the future as best I can. And so it's like that basic rhetorical device or approach to things is an example of a very powerful rhetorical device. And then, of course, the other aspect of that in Christianity is, even though you have this great resolve and you're serious and everything, expect it to fail. You will continue to sin, regardless. You will continue. So, I mean, I like that model, but of course, that model is very blame focused, right? So it tends to suggest to people that sin itself is a matter of concern rather than one's own sin is the matter of concern. IFS, as a corollary here in terms of powerful rhetorical tools, it excuses, in a sense, it doesn't do person more effectively. It's like it says, okay, this other person is periodically subject to being overcome by their self-protection instinct, and it's going to display like whatever towards me, but that's all it is. And well, a lot of things you said really resonated thoroughly, like the fact that you indicated that she is feeling guilt and stuff about it afterwards. And the thing is, I knew that already, but because she wasn't voicing it, I was like, you're not saying it, so it doesn't count, kind of shit, Hearing from another person to validate my perspective that, in fact, because I've been trying to understand it for a long time. And I also getting a lot of pushback from her about the idea that she has a problem of some sort, or that there's something to address, even for a while, not so much recently, but anyway. So it was very much a hugely impactful conversation, and I do feel a lot lighter. I feel relaxed I feel like a great heaviness has been lifted off of me, and I didn't even realize it was there. I mean, I was starting to realize it. I was trying to put together what it was. Okay, so let me read some things here. So Becky says, you're detaching through compassion. I'm detaching compassionately rather than detaching adversarially. And it's all the difference there is. A lot of friends out there like to hate in the comments on STJs and claim that I'm either an INTP or an ISTJ. Eric, what do you think about that? I think you're an ESTJ. I think it's pretty cut and dry. You just don't. It's not that you're not capable of TI. You're perfectly capable of it, and I'm sure you're fine at it. But what your friends aren't doing is, or whoever isn't doing, is attention to what you're saying and what that's doing in the communication. If they're paying attention to that, then they're not going to be seeing TI in you. So let's see here. Humility should always be a prerequisite to empathy. Do you agree? No. I don't necessarily think they're related necessarily. I'm not sure. Let me think about it some more, or ask me some more question that gives me a little bit more to work with. Okay. I must be empathic with all of my humility then. There's also a reason behind why it's so hard to admit to the guilt too, which we were able to go over in a few lights. A few lights? I think you mistyped that. I must be humble in order to be empathetic. Really? Are you sure? I think humility knows that many times genuine empathy isn't actually possible. Well, what is empathy anyway? I get compassion. I understand what compassion is, okay? I really don't fully understand what empathy is versus, say, sympathy. I do get what sympathy is. That is to say, feeling sorry for something sad you see. I get that feeling. I don't really get what empathy is, per se. I understand it to be different in that you can just sort of generally put your in the emotional place of the other or something. I don't know. But, I mean, I feel like I can put myself in the emotional place of the other, I guess. It's like, well, I guess I've never even thought about it before. Let me think about it. Put myself in the emotional place of the other? Is that what empathy means? Like, what emotion? I can do that some. I'd be like, oh, that they must be feeling sad because their dog died or something. I can think that. I think those things sometimes. I got to remember. I got to remember shit like that though. Like, okay, remember, don't be all goofy and shit because Jacob's mom died yesterday, and so you got to be all solemn and stuff. You know, that's probably not empathy. I guess it's just FE, right? But I don't really feel. No, I mean it's like I don't feel what it would be like to feel like he feels right now at all, or anything like that. I just think, okay, well, I think, well, he's sad, and if I were sad, I wouldn't want to hear a bunch of giggles and stuff too. Right? That's empathy, right? That's empathy. The person's feelings and other person's feelings. If you can feel what another person feels, that is empathy. If you understand what they feel, that is sympathy. Okay. Well, I can't really feel what other people feel. I feel my own feelings about other people's state of being. So it's like seeing somebody in a bad situation will make me feel bad, but it won't make me feel what that person's feeling. So like if that person's in a situation that's dangerous to them and scary in some regard, I probably won't feel scared, but I'll feel bad, you know, like, oh, I don't like this. This guy's not going to end well, you know. Rowan Morgan says empathy is overrated. Understanding is more useful in relationships. Jordan Spike, if you wanted to do the type police job indefinitely, then you could softly type police the interviewees on Benjamin Zadek's channel. A lot of type people from Dave Powers. Why do I have to do it softly? Can I hardly do it? I probably should take advantage of that. You know, it's funny. It's like whenever I think, oh, I'd like to do type police, I don't know who to do. I just go to his channel and check out some of the people he types, he interviews. Because I'm sure there's shit tons of wrong ones in there. I just go through the whole thing and be like, okay, now I got half of DSP's community in jail. That would seem cheap. No, it doesn't seem cheap. I mean, I wouldn't want to. I guess it would. I don't know. I mean, my take on it is, so what? There's a forum where they provide lots of potential candidates for you to type police. It doesn't even have to be about DSP. I just be like, okay, this person is not a meow. No, you're not. You're going to jail. I don't even have to mention DSP. If a friend has a dog that dies, I understand empathy because I had a dog that died. If I didn't have a dog that dies, I can understand why he's sad because his pet died. I had a dog that died, so I understand how significant an event that can be to somebody. But even so, if your dog dies, I'll express the appropriate sympathy, but I probably won't feel anything at all. I don't think I won't feel bad for you. I'll just be like, man, I won't be happy about it. I won't be like, hooray, your dog died. I just to be like, oh, his dog died. That's unfortunate. And then not thinking I thought about it. But if my dog dies, of course, I'm going to think a lot about it. So, I think it's like I see how they feel, and I'll feel like that. Maybe it's not the same, but how I imagine they'd feel. Like, for example, Jordan Spike. Let me go back to why you're an EST check. You have a plan here in mind of how this would work well if I were to do it softly. In other words, if I were to go in with good FE as an interface DOM, okay, you're saying, look, Eric, this is a good idea, but it requires certain elements as preconditions to working right. And there's certain order operations here. Basically, you got to make nice first. Realize that as a resource to keep on making type leads is, and it's a good idea. It is a good idea. But it's also indicative of the fact that you're an ESTJ, because what you're looking at is the world through a path and interface modality in general. You're saying, look, this is a good, being an SI tool user as well, you go, I know from experience that type please works for Eric. That he should, but he's limited also, and you've thought through the TE mechanics of it. Of course, there's a finite number of people you can do this to. I'm not. And you've problem solved because that's your nature. And you said, I've got a solution to this problem. Here you go. You can do, he could do all these videos from this other guy. But then, being an interface DOM, you didn't just start ideating about different things I could do. You went back to being responsive to the likely response to that, which is, okay, well, this might run afoul of here I'm gonna bring out my 8th slot active but helpful FE to my TE and go, okay, well, that probably not gonna play well. So, but if you came in soft, then it'd play well. That shit right there is indicative of you being an ESTJ because of all the stuff I just explained. Now, you could also be, that wouldn't necessarily mean you're just an ESTJ, just that thing alone, but I'm saying it's consistent with it. It might also be consistent with an FE DOM, but you're not an FE DOM. So what are the types going to kind of look like an DOM some? Well, a TE DOM, actually, because depending on what they're doing and what they're communicating for, if FE serves their TE, it will come out and do its job to more or less good effect, depending on the specific individual ESTJ. So there's a little extra ESTJ why you is stuff. All right, let me go and see what other exciting chat comments I have to read, and that will prompt more exciting thoughts and funs. Music triggers my emotions so much that I be spell it with a P. Work after a 12-hour night, folks. Good night, Becky. Sleep well. So it is sympathy. Say you don't feel what the other person is feeling. Well, I mean, I don't feel what the other person is feeling when I feel sympathy. I feel sadness or negative emotion of some sort. And powerful to look away. I do not want to see the sad thing. I don't want to hear about the sad thing. Kimberly told me a couple of, this is another example of Becky's shit playing well. It's like in the car tonight, she told me a couple of sad stories from her day. And normally I respond with, Kimberly, don't tell me sad shit like that. I don't want to hear it. It's fucking depressing. Instead, tonight I just accepted it on the grounds that, okay, well, how does my true self deal with this? Compassionately and acceptingly. So I'm going to be compassionate towards Kimberly and not try to shut her down for saying this depressing shit that I don't want to hear. I'm going to try to accept that that's just what she needs to talk about. And, you know, and then the crazy thing is when I was done listening and engaging appropriately, and there's a little pause, and then she said, but I know I shouldn't say stuff like that to you. And I'm like, no, it's fine. It's like, what? That's just 180 degrees from how we interact in like one day. It's pretty crazy. He's showering covered in insulation. Tell him he should remove his insulation covers before getting in the shower. Okay. That's going to keep the water from getting onto his skin. Auditory and olfactory input is linked closest to memory. Probably. I would believe that. I would say I know smells link strongly to memory for me. And there are certain smells that will take me back to the smell of like my parents' rental properties in the desert that I used to go work on when I was a kid and stuff like that. John Brooks. Sten Morera, old John Brooks. Hello. Hello. Planet Ketchup, only if you pity the person, Adrian, feeling sorry for them. It's impossible to feel another person's feelings. Empathy, when described as internalizing another's emotional state, is bullshit. I don't think it's bullshit, Rowan. I mean, it's funny watching Kimberly when she's not being fully self-aware of how she's appearing to me. She will often literally mirror what I'm doing. Like when if I'm talking to a third party and it's getting emotionally agitated in some regard, like, listen to me, this is blah, 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 blah. And I'll see Kimberly like standing next to me or standing over here, let's say, and she'll be just very, very faintly like literally mirroring all of my gestures and moving her mouth, even though it's the words that I'm saying at all, you know. She's mirroring. I don't know what else to call it. I've seen it before in life too. To a certain extent, I can identify with it. It's like I used to mirror myself. I used to say a word myself like this. I'd be like, anyway, it's getting cold down under. It's getting cold down under. I don't know why I did that. It was just to my childhood when I did that. It's a strange thing to do. Explain why we have mirror neurons. It's amazing how fast you picked up these concepts. Oh, well. I'm a pretty smart guy. You can relate to how another person... I don't know how to answer that other than that. You know? You can relate to how another person feels only within your own filter of experience and imagination. Well, I mean, obviously it's true that you can't literally feel another person's feelings. I can't reach into you, take a sponge, reach into you with a sponge, soak up a little bit of your moisture, and then like drip it onto my tongue. Oh, that is sad. That's really sad. Ew. You know, that's true. You can't do that. But what you can do, is you can read the person's emotional state and you can experience your own equivalent of it. So, you know, and we have plenty of reason to think that equivalent is probably pretty much in the same, at least, shade of emotion. You know, it may not be, no two people's exact emotional experience can be duplicated or anything, or really compared meaningfully, probably, but it's fair to say that we can compare in the following way, that we can compare that laughing is different than crying, and for everybody, laughing is a positive experience and crying depends, you know. So we can make some distinctions. You know, if somebody's laughing most of the time, you can be able to tell if they're having an honest laugh or something, that they're probably, at that moment anyway, feeling pretty good. That correlates with a good emotion. A bong would be perfect now, Angan's here. Thank you for prompting me. I'm a little slow on the bong smoking these days. I'm triggered by March smells. The dog poo melting in the snow. Reminds you of your time working at the Humane Society. On a romantic relationship between an INFP and an INFJ. Let's hear all you have to say about it, Eric. Well, let's see. I mean, the biggest problem is INFJ seeks SE. INFP has none to provide. Doesn't even know what the INFJ is asking for or hoping that they'll provide. Now, the INFP is in a better situation there because they're seeking SI, and that's in the 8th slot of the INFJ. So there's a fair amount of SI going on with the INFJ, but the INFJ does not want their SI to serve anybody else's need for SI. They want their SI to always serve their NI. Now, concurrently, of course, the relationship between the NI Dom in INFJ, that NI, and the NE tool of INFP is probably going to be a fairly decent one, but there's also this thing. I'm not sure how strongly this carries across those all different types, but I have a notion that if you're a dominant, if it's your 5th slot function, you find people who have it as their tool function to be using it kind of clumsily. So there'll be a sense from the INFJ that they don't really respect the way the INFP is using extroverted intuition. And then the INFP, who's a physical aspect of a type anyway, and therefore sort of extra countervalues NI, where you've got a situation where the INFP is like maximally in opposition to their 6th function because both their feelings, their dominant nature, and their extroverted intuition, their tool function, are constantly building off of the inherent instability of feelings. So it's like, because a person's feelings are always changing, there are always new possibilities emerging. They're using their tool function of extrovertedly intuiting out ideational possibilities in conjunction with their fluid nature and attachment-based nature. It makes it very difficult for them to resolve things down to singulars, and it also makes it difficult for them to act upon anything. And so their 6th slot is especially non-active in meaningful ways, and their 7th slot is especially polar. They're kind of an extreme type in that regard. So I think INFJ is going to have ultimately the worst end of the stick, because INFP is largely going to feel, I think, satisfied by the NI that, I'll put it this way, the NI the INFJ provides is not going to be the sort of thing that runs afoul of their countervalue that they place in their own NI, or when NI is attempted to be imposed upon them, because they're both introverts. And so I think the INFP is not going to be bothered by the dominant nature of the INFJ. The INFP is not going to feel like they're getting completely shut out on their sought SI. The INFP is going to feel as though the INFJ has enough authentic emotion in the 6th slot for them to validate on their metric. And so it's like INFP should be fine, but the INFJ is going to get tired of it. That's what I think. Let's see. Where are we going? Oxytocin is the love chemical that makes you warm and fuzzy. Oxytocin. Is that the stuff that comes out of my penis when I have sexual intercourse? Is that what you mean by the love chemical? I thought that was called Manseed. Is the Tupac of typology. I hope not, because then I'll be murdered in Las Vegas. That's what I'm saying. When people claim they use empathy, they're thinking magically. Wrong, they seek TE. Who does? Oh, you mean INFPs? Oh, yeah, my bad. You're right. They do seek TE. Well, I mean, then they're fucked. They're just as fucked as INFJ. I mean, INFJ is they're seeking each other's polars. They're fucked. Yeah. I was thinking about ENFPs, I guess. Yeah, INFPs, FI, TE seeking. INFJ's got no TE to give them. And hidden agenda for INFP is SI. Well, I mean, it's like they want to build particularist event stories and tell those stories and share that SI experience with their loved ones and stuff. INFJ doesn't for that purpose. SI is, from their perspective, for serving their NI. So I think that relationship's kind of a nightmare now that you mentioned that. Sorry, that was my bad. I got that wrong. Empathy is normally an involuntary reaction. It's not something the person claims to be able to do. It's something they are unable to prevent. Oh, empathy is acting up again. You got any Pepto-Bismol? Tupac is in New Zealand, alive and well, so the really? Thank God. Real now. Night, everyone. Again, Eric, really glad you and Kimberly enjoyed our conversation. Yeah, I did. Thank you. I don't disagree with that, Jerry the Mouse, but I'm apparently failing to say that people use the word to mean something it doesn't. That's true. Obviously, people don't literally empathize and think they do. There's people. Well, I mean, the thing is, people speak in metaphor all the time without being aware they're speaking in metaphor, and to embrace it as a rhetorical tool that can be very effective, but it be metaphorical. And we'll think that because a metaphor rings particularly resonant in some regard, that makes it non-metaphorical, which is not the case. Tell me more about 8-slot SI. 8-slot SI. Well, for average INFJ, for example, or INTJ, I guess is the other one. As your 8-slot SI is going to probably if the IN is going to be good at the part of SI that is necessary for their NI in general. So what that ends up meaning is, foremost, their NI is a metaphysical function. So their 8-slot SI is going to be much more effective at the metaphysical aspect of the physical aspect. So INFJs are like not take very good physical care of themselves in the sense of going to sleep too late, skip meals, having fluctuating weight. Like, well, INFJs will sometimes start exercise regimen and do it for a while, like stick with it for a while and lose weight and then stop and then put weight back on, stuff like that. That's an example of the bad physical SI. And that includes, to some extent, routines. But the good part of it is they won't not show up at appointments, for example. They'll be on time for everything. They'll get the shit done they need to get done they get everything SI done that is important, that is significant, determinate in any way. Because in that regard, the SI is serving the NI, which is seeking that significance and determinateness. Let's see here. Okay. Planet, have a good night. I'm on the West Coast, says Angintier. Jerry like the mouse. People misuse words all the time. Myself, and guilty of it frequently. I myself am guilty of it frequently, but is what that said before autocorrect. Hormones, baby. Hormones? Hormones. I agree. Jerry like the mouse. It sounds a lot like quantum physics. You can tell a person where they are or where they've been, but never the same at the same time. I mean, I think that all of reality is subject to those sort of exclusivities. You know, you can't ever be anything full blast without sacrificing something else. You know, it's like there are people who attempt to be like, you know, Michael Jordan, who after he played basketball wanted to go play professional baseball as well. But really, you know, it's okay, fine. So, but then he can't also be a composer of symphonies and something else. You know, at a certain point, you got to just concede that you have a finite number of hours and you can only do so many things, and lots of things have an incredibly steep learning curve and take a lot of time to learn. And so, you know, you got to make your choices and you got to select your potentialities and sacrifice others. And it's one of the hardest things, I think, for INFPs to come to terms with, is the notion that they need to be willing to sacrifice some of the potentials. They have to choose some. They don't know for sure if they're making the right choice now. It's like they have an incredible insight about how people, including themselves, will feel months from now, for example. I had an INFP peg exactly how our relationship was going to end months before it ended, you know, right at the beginning of its turning. It was pretty impressive, really. It's like, ooh, you're that, you can do that with FI? Wow, that's powerful. But anyway, let me go back to the chat and see what I was talking about. I don't even remember. How the hell can an INFP be an Enneagram 8? They would be a hard person to deal with. Would that make them have something like Asperger's? No. Or would they be like an unhealthy ESTJ? No. They'd be an INFP 8. I mean, Kimberly's an IJ 6-8. He's got a lot of 8 in there. Would you say, well, how are an ISFJ? They're supposed to be like the nicest people. When I first started going out of the court, Kimberly, I called her the niceness coordinator. Then I realized she's not very nice. And she can swing a fucking hammer. Believe me, she's got plenty of 8 to her. She screamed to somebody the other day about how they were talking to their kid. She didn't approve of it. I approved of her screaming at her, the person. She was telling me about it in the car. Let's see. No, they would not have anything like Asperger's. They'd just be an INFP that's angry, that's brooding, you know, prone to lashing out at people. It's not, you can imagine it this way too. It'd be like an INFP chooses to defend what they feel is important in an outraged fashion rather than in some other fashion, like rather than an accepting fashion or withdrawing fashion or something. You can see the FI providing the necessary engine of importance, right? Let's see. How is Zandy for this every life? Do you text her when it's about to get going? No. But I do this usually before we started. I go, Zandy, if you can hear me, I'm gonna live stream. So see, I'm running a little test. So far, seems to be working. It's my I guess it's super. I didn't even know. Let's see. I was thinking about my ISTJ guy and I argue. His TE and SI bullies me. His TE seems to win the moment, but whatever function I have, I dissect the information TE is presented. So he wins in the moment, but I win a day after. Do you feel like you win when you win a day after? Does he go, oh, you're right? Or do you go, you just kick him in the balls? Oh, I have a response for you. Okay, yeah. You see, these are my boots. Okay, here's my answer. Just, he's like, what the fuck, Sandy? What the fuck, dude? What the fuck? You just kicked me in the balls. It's not cool. And you're like, listen, motherfucker, I can't even call you my boyfriend. I have to call you my guy. What the fuck's up with that? And you kick him in the balls again. He's like, that's it, Sandy. I'm breaking up with you. You're like, I don't even care. You're already sleeping with Susan. That's Sandy's story tonight. I'm sorry to have exposed your deepest, darkest secrets there, Sandy. That wasn't a make-believe scene. That was word for word something Sandy told me happened just an hour after the live stream. So, anyway, she's a bit of a handful. She says, if I'm going after a guy, I'm going straight for the nuts. I'm wearing my steel-toed boots and I'm going straight for the nuts. That's why I don't fuck with Sandy. You know, it's not a good idea to fuck with Sandy. Okay, let's see. No, usually I'm watching choreography dancing videos on YouTube, so that's why I show up real quick. That's Danny, just admit it. You're got it on loop, dancing party dance. You've been working on dancing party dance for months now, haven't you? Listen, whatever you have already recorded is plenty good, I'm sure. Sandy does not be perfect. Okay. I know you say you've got no rhythm in your soul, but I can read it in your chat. You good? I'm good, Matthew Alistair. I'm good. I had a little bit of a frustrating evening and I tried to print your address on the Cricut because we don't have the right pen. But that's not your fault, nor your address's fault, nor the Cricut's fault. Really, it's my fault for leaving the cap off the pen. I've been watching Stargate SG-1, and it's like I'm back in the 90s. I've watched like every fucking episode of it. There's this big stretch of time when my very favorite activity was if I had a day off from work, I would just, and hopefully Candace and Delilah didn't have a day off, you know. I would just stay home and I just get alcohol and start drinking when I woke up in the morning, like at 9 a.m. or 7 a.m. or whatever time I woke up, and watch Stargate, like marathon of Stargate, which I had on my DVR. You know, I recorded. I had set to record series, so I had shit tons of them. I watched them all. Let's see here. SGU is fantastic. Try it. What's SGU? Stargate Universe? Why is there no bong emoji? Good question. Yeah, I'm up to season 4. Lazy Sunday in bed. The House MD of Typology. I am the house doctor of Typology. Is there a doctor in the house? Yeah. I'm the house doctor of Typology and janitor. What can I do for you? He's having a heart attack. Let's see. Yeah, he looks like he's going to die in INFP. I'm sorry. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but INFP. Go in peace, my son. Okay. That would be $700, please. Okay, so let's see here. I just go like, you see how statement A comes to statement B? And he's like, well, but it works, Zandy. It works, okay? Stop shitting on my duct-taped blender. It works beautifully. Look at it blend. Come here. Zandy, stand right here and you look at this thing blend. Now tell me That's not the most fucking effective blender you've ever seen. You tell me that with a straight face, Sandy. Okay. Shoe knife, steel toe Zandy. Yeah, that's what they call her. That's her full name as a underground character. Yeah. Love won't make Kim act like you want, I don't think. You have to act like a behaviorist about it. Not that I know enough about the situation to side with you, but if she doesn't think there's ... Oh, she thinks there's ... She thinks there's ... Okay, so just be aware of that. Things are gonna be fine. I'm not. It's not. I'm not going to respond. I know. I have a much better understanding of how to respond now. I don't need to respond with love. I don't need to love her well or anything. I just need to understand that that's not her talking shit about me. That's a ghost talking shit about something. And I can respond with compassion, acceptance, or curiosity, which I'm not going to respond much with curiosity, but I don't need to respond with love. I don't need to respond at all. It just gets me riled up anyway. Because it's not even Kimberly saying that shit. It's some part of her that feels the need to express that. Yeah, I was leaning the same way yesterday, 2 days ago. I just, I'm not getting married. Don't worry about that. I'm not getting married anytime soon at all. And I'm not going to get married until I think, until I genuinely feel like it's a safe decision, you know? And I don't currently, so. My ex-ISFJ showed similar cutthroat behavior too, despite the fuzziness. Yeah, but, the thing is, I don't know. Well, I guess we'll see how it plays out long term. I recognize the reality that insightful behavior is designed to incite. And so historically, there's been a limited capacity in me to resist incitation if it's concerted effort to incite by a loved one, especially. I don't think levels change the situation either. And that I realize is one of the most liberating things I took away from our conversation today. I don't need to feel more or get more moist. I need to recognize that, it's ghosts that keep punching me, and their fists just go right through me. It doesn't even impact me really, except for the fact that I get all upset that this ghost has the gall to be punching me, and that's not fair. This ghost is punching me, and blah 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 blah. But it's just not even. It's not worth my giving it the serious weight that I have historically, because that's not her, and she's not really talking to me. She's talking to her parents or something, Oh yeah, I'm good at dancing. Have you seen Dancing Party Dance, Sandy? Okay. That sounds like a good idea, Matthew. I like the idea. And I do want you to rap over the Whisper Shout beat. I will pull it up and make a loop of it or something for you. What I really want to know, if Eric is good at dancing, Yes, very, very, very good at dancing. I'm an excellent dancer. In fact, if I weren't doing this, I'd probably be doing either modern jazz or tap at the Bolshoi Ballet's Broadway Tony Award winning dancing dance-off show. Probably. That would be my guess. Eric, I'm a professional magician. In your opinion, what type would be the easiest to deceive? Well, I mean, I suppose it would be dependent on the sort of deception you're trying to attain, but a magician's deception, namely a willingness to entertain the possibility somehow that there was magic involved, for example, that would suggest to me weak NI, and it would probably be an STJ, ESTJ, or ESFJ, or possibly maybe I think those would be the two. Well, I mean, ISFJs are pretty gullible too, and again, that's probably weaker NI, and probably ISTJs as well. That'd be my guess. And let's see. I've been learning for so long. You think I would be good at it, but I'm trying my best at Matthew. Well, I mean, look, Andy, I have got a career-making opportunity for you in the field of dance. Because right now, I know a guy who's got a song that is going to be a worldwide hit for sure. And he's looking for people to do the dancing party dance in this video and send it to him, and he'll include it in this compilation of people doing the dance. Now, if Zandy, you're in that video, I would guess, and this is just my personal guess as being Steve, the guy telling you this, I would guess 85% chance that it'll become the #1 hit in the world all time. And that would make you pretty well known as a dancer. At that point, I would suggest, even if you were a shitty dancer, it won't go well. You get credit for being a good dancer because you're so well known for being a dancer. See what I'm saying? Well, thanks, Steve. Thanks for that, sharing that suggestion. You heard it from Steve, everybody. Steve says he thinks that there's an 85% chance that my song Dancing Party Dance will become the #1 hit in the world. So, I mean, I think it's rather a bold prediction, Steve, but I appreciate your faith in the song and the video, which will be the catalyst of the world's most intense feeding frenzy of dancing party dance since the dawn of time. Dancing Party Dance is the name of this song, but instead of learning words, you should dance along. If you don't know the dance, don't fret about it, friends, because dance teaching songs have a long tradition. And the Dancing Party Dance, which goes to this song, is not a hard dance to do and not too long. First, you're walking forwards, pointing at stuff. I can't remember it. I can't remember all the words. Let's see here. I've been learning for so long. You think I'd be good, but I'm trying. Gangsters don't dance, they boogie. Or sometimes they've been known to get down. Has anybody here amongst these 14 people plus myself ever attempted to get down or successfully actually have gotten down before? Anyone? No? Well, boogie woogieing, I think, is something many people at least they've met somebody who successfully boogie woogied before, even if they haven't themselves, probably. They have a family member maybe who can boogie woogie. Okay, well, we got one here, and I believe it with this guy, actually. I don't doubt, Taylor, that you have indeed succeeded at getting down. Now, but I will say the amount of people who talk about getting down and the amount of times that are indicated as times to get down vastly exceed the actual number of those who get down and the actual number of opportunities in which one ought to get down. So that's just I did my senior thesis on this, so it's an issue very close to my heart. For example, the one thing I know for sure I don't want to be ever accused of is being a jive turkey. So that's why I take this shit seriously. It's never difficult to get up, Trey. Getting up is what everyone does all the time. That's just normal life, okay? The difficulty is once you're up, and you've been up for a while, it can be especially difficult to get down, all right? So take it from me, the get down king. I mean, meaning that I talk about people getting down, not that I do it myself, I'm the king of talking about getting down, right? Which is close to being. This is kind of a form of pre-getting down in a way. I got knocked down, but I got up again. They're never going to keep me down. So saith that band. So saith us all. What's that band called again? Sugar. I forget what they're called. Chumbawamba. Okay, yeah. It's easy for me to get up, but hard for me to get down. Easy for me to stand firm, but hard to walk all around. So, Sugar Ray. That was the other band that was the band I was trying to think of. Yeah, the Sugar Ray thing, that one about corner of my girlfriend's 4-post bed. Known as the Symphony of 4-Post Beds. I believe this is the title of the song. Well, it's disturbed lyrics at Ham. What's disturbed lyrics at Ham? I've been learning for so long, you think I'd be good at it, but I'm trying my best. That's lyrics right there, Zandy. Pretty good lyrics. Pretty good lyrics. I see. How will you know when you're good enough at dancing, Zandy? Have you already attained a boogie woogie? These are the sounds of my youth. Matchbox 20 is kind of horrible. Third Eye Blind, okay, I guess. I got a song or two. Sugar Ray, yeah, I got a song or two. I listened to all that stuff too. Listened to the radio as it played the musical strains of my generation. You know, I'm a lot older than Taylor, of course. Taylor is only 14, and I'm 47. It's a 33-year difference, but we're still good friends, despite that. The only 14-year-old I know that I'm friends with. But you know, he's a mature 14. The impression that I get by the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones is a song about somebody who never got knocked down, but doubts his ability to get up again. Really? Get down with the sickness. Get down with your sick, bad self. I'm curious about this Mighty Mighty Boss Tones song. It's about somebody who never got knocked down, but doubts his ability to get up again. So is he still up and doubts his ability to stay up? Or did he get knocked down once at the end? Like, he's never been knocked down and finally gets knocked down. Now he doesn't think he can get back up again. Florian Bischoff. Hi. How are you today? Angantir. Early WOW PvP videos to Linkin Park and Korn. Korn is not a good band, and neither is Linkin Park. Are I host Eric? Yes, I am. I am host Eric. One part host, one part Eric. That is I. And you are WH Low, the lowest of all the lows. You heard me from CS Joseph. Taylor BTFO. Buy the French orangutan. Buy it today. It's been on sale for a long time now. I need to find a buyer for it. It's you, Taylor. World of Warcraft player versus player. Korn is not a good band. IDK BTFO. I told you, it's buy the French orangutan. He's asking you to buy a monkey, a large monkey. BTFO, bro. BTFO. Buy your own fucking orangutan. Okay? Something the kids are always saying to each other these days. It's just a constant back and forth about purchasing primates. It's because I think old Pete made a song about it, and now everybody wants to do it. Now that he died of a drug overdose. Everyone's like, okay, now he's important. Be the fix, all these. One shouldn't speak ill of the dead, of course, and I don't mean to speak ill of him at all. I actually thought he was quite talented from what little bit I've seen. And I just prefer my own interpretation. Okay? I just prefer my own interpretation of things. Like when you say, look it up, Gramps, I interpret that to mean, look, I have cramps. You're reporting to me that you've got cramps in your shins or maybe your calves, your feet. I don't know. So, I'm going to respond to that by going, well, look, probably you're dehydrated. Ham bone. Probably you're dehydrated. And that's why you have cramps. Moob, I can do the floss. Youngsters. What? Be the fun orangutan. Bonsoir. I'm the French orangutan. Would you like to brush with me, Tina? Milky Sands, Milky Sands. Well, there's your French orangutan. That's not an orangutan. That's just a Frenchman. Okay. My name is Gerald. But it's okay. I pretend to be an orangutan if you want. It's fine. Oui, quel est-il? Omelette du fromage. What have you been doing this stream? I've been responding to things that people say in the chat, as I always do. I just read the chats and come up with random shit to say and make jokes and wait for people like W.H. Lowe to arrive and shower him with copious amounts of attention and also interest, because he introduced himself as a visitor sent by way of one C.S. Joseph. Now, I could be optimistic and conclude that W.H. Lowe came as a consequence of a referral from C.S. Joseph, who said, here's a guy you might want to check out. You might want to go see host Eric. He really seems to know what he's talking about. I could be optimistic and conclude that indeed that's what C.S. Joseph has done in this circumstance, but I'm instead going to choose to be realistic and suggest that you come in with some certain perceptions about me that have been decided beforehand, maybe not fully decided, but at least considered beforehand, that are not entirely flattering, so that I acknowledge, for example, that C.S. Joseph might not resist potentially the opportunity to voice certain critiques, and that would be fine, as I am subject to such, as is anyone. So, regardless, that's what I've been doing. Shit like that. Shit like I just did. Feeling pretty good tonight. Feeling pretty cheerful. W.H. Lowe's here, so, I was like seeing W.H. Lowe. And I'm always like, on Lin Yin Chen, he seems mean. Who's Lin Yin Chen? I don't know who that is. Somebody text me or what? If people can text me too if they want. What is this? Somebody sent me a YouTube link. Let's see. Oh, it's Taylor. Taylor sent me something. I gotta put your as a contact. Yeah. Taylor. Done. Okay. So, sorry for the delay there. I had to put that in the phone because it's just when you have the impetus to do something like that and you've been not doing for way too long, you should have been not doing it for a long time. You just got to do it. You just got to SE the shit. Tangy. Oh, thank you. I did, Taylor. I saved your number. Bong time. F off. Well, you don't need to tell us to fuck off just because you want to smoke a bong rip. Jeez. Gosh, Rowan Morgan. Talk about manners difficulties. Tonight, guys, I'd like to talk to you about the importance of manners. It's critically important that we all constantly, all the time, have good manners. Okay? There's never an excuse for telling somebody something that makes them feel bad. Okay? Taylor, this is why you're in the principal's office today. Well, what did you do again? Taylor, you need to stop that language, because I have asked you to come up here tonight because you have not been caring enough about feelings. Not enough. So the rule is, anything that might ever make anybody feel bad, we don't say. Okay? Are we clear, mister? Mean people, BTFO, BTFO. BTFO. It's making me want to go buy some. Fuck yeah. Ain't nothing that does a body as much good is some freshly squozen grapefruit juices. Squozen from the fleshiest part of the grapefruit. Thick like blood. No beverage as close to godly nectar as grapefruit juice. Except perhaps grapefruit juice mixed with grapefruit soda, which is what I am currently drinking. Now that's godly indeed, a nectar. Let's see. Angantier says, bitch, please. Presumably he's addressing me. Yes, what would you like me to do? Please what? Get the mail? Please get your beer? Come on. I need more instruction than that. I do appreciate the politeness, though. You did call me bitch, but I appreciate the please. That softens it. That's kind of you. Oh, shit, I'm sorry. You're forgiven, Rowan. What are you sorry for? Oh, yeah, that's right. Telling us all to fuck off. Or just me, I'm not sure. W.H. Low. Lol. Yeah. A lot of robust emotions of risibility. Matthew Allister says, can you imagine another imaginary world in which SE is secondary and almost unnecessary compared to any, and high SE users are viewed as unnecessarily in the moment and grounded? That's how Matthew talks. Well, I can now, thanks to you painting such a vivid picture of it. This world is a world of wonder. I mean, probably 3/4 of the things in the world are made of gossamer, which is a high amount of gossamer for any universe, but almost sort of guarantees you that it's also going to be high in slightly out of focus lenses. It'll be very, very magical place. So I would say, yeah, I can imagine it. It feels a lot like gossamer and blurry focus lenses, all encapsulated in the dewdrop. How many dewdrops do you think it takes to form a puddle of dew, if the puddle is to be sized for a fairy dew puddle? Matthew, you'd be an expert in that. You should tell me. Keeps you slim. What keeps you slim? Having your body parts chopped off? That's not slim, Zandy. That's just handicapped. Taylor, I thought about stopping in to say hi, but I thought it might be too much to be like, hey, remember giving me shit tons of detentions in high school? Yeah, I was just in the courthouse. DOC gave me detention. Well, yeah, don't torture the poor guy. I mean, I'm sure he's living this sort of nightmare of trying to get a bunch of teenagers to adhere to some bullshit that he doesn't believe in himself, probably. You have to start going to church? Yeah. Why are you going to church? Where are you guys start going? To learn about things that are more, you get more gossamer? Are you scared? I'm using my manners. Are you scared? Those are manners, but that doesn't mean they're good manners, okay? You can also have bad manners. And frankly, mister, your manners are getting a little on the cheeky side, okay? I got banned on CS Joseph's live stream because I called out the mod's abusive use of banning people. Frowny face. I'm sorry to hear that, WH Low. That must have made you feel, wow, how low. He's my Facebook friend now. Who? Church girls? Oh, you're a high school guy. Church girls are freaks. A big RPG. What's a big RPG? Your mom's face? Have you ever wondered how people that lived 1,000 to 2,000 years ago would react if they were to travel to the future and see our modern technology? I think they'd go, yeah, not bad. I'm impressed. I thought maybe you'd be a little further along on this, but pretty good. Pretty good. You guys did a pretty good job. What's this thing? Flamethrower? Let me see it. Well, why shouldn't I point it at you? Me just came on. I don't even know how a flame comes. Thank you, Taylor. Noted. But also have to remember to talk to them. To tell them to disobey their Lord for the night. Or whatever. Who are you talking about? The witches? The pagans? The Ukrainians? People living north of the equator? I don't even know. Neither do you. How a simple car ride would scare the heck out of them. This is a very disjointed live stream I'm having here. Just sort of, this is probably the least focused live stream I've ever done. I'm not really answering any questions or anything. I'm just rambling on and reading random shit from the chat. Well, what are you gonna do? They would see us as gods, really, it makes you think. I mean, I think they'd put 2 and 2 together pretty quick that it's the machine doing the thing, not the person. Seeing me drive a car, they'd initially think I'm a god. But as soon as you show one of them that they can make the car do the same thing I'm making it do, the car's just a machine, they're gonna lose that sense of God is over there. I mean, you could try to force that. Sure. You could say, okay, so I'm here to impose despotism on you guys. So I've got some weapons here, and I'm going to tell you a bunch of bullshit, and scare the fuck out of you, and I'm going to have to kill a couple of you guys. It's okay. Once you're fully believing that I'm your God and really worshiping the fuck out of me, then, you know, I'll be fair, I'll be just, it'll be fine. It's Abraham. Is Abraham here? Yeah, he is. I see. Okay, let's see here. Church girls. Here's the church girl maneuver. Be visibly detached from the moral rulings. Don't overdo the rebelliousness here. Be available and mysterious. That's tricky. That's manipulative. I bet you it'll probably work, though. What does hidden agenda SI look like? How do INTPs use NI? Hidden agenda SI. Well, for one aspect of it will be INTPs will enjoy the physical aspects of it that are self-pleasing. So that means they'll enjoy sipping a cup of hot cocoa and settling into something with proper attention to their comfort, making a pillow that makes them comfortable in the chair, all that kind of shit, maybe. But at the same time, they'll have a bunch of empty cans all over their desk because that's that part of SI is not part of SI that they care about. In a real-time sense, they only care about their comfort in the immediate, what's going to make me feel good right now kind of way, but not in the keeping your track of your existing resources, keeping things tidy or anything like that. Now, the part that they really care about, though, is everything I've said so far is basically the same for INFP, but the next part is just INTP and not true for INFP, which is INTP wants it to be, they want their life to be concluded at the end of it with a series of specific stories from their own experience, from their life, that are neat vignettes of them succeeding and never pushing it too far, right? Always leaving them hungry a little bit, taking full advantage of the good aspects of their SE polar, I guess you could say. And they want a clean narrative. This, you can contrast this very dramatically with the ENTP, who wants the freedom to have a very messy narrative. I don't think INTPs ever really get comfortable with that idea of having a very messy narrative. My narrative is a complete mess, right? It's, who am I? I've got no NI resonance really as an identity, and being NI ignoring, I like that. I guess I like the fact that it's hard to say in a single sentence what I am or what I do or who I am or something like that, you know. But for an INTP, their relationship with NI is much more positive than most 6th slot relations, than the majority of them. So they're in the top 4. They're in the set of 4 that is most comfortable with their 6th slot function, because their dominant function TI is metaphysical. It deals with things in conditional logic. TI. Their second function, NE, is metaphysical. It deals with ideation on that metaphysical plane, that is, say, creating new links and talking and stuff like that. Basically, extroverting ideational stuff. So that's both metaphysical. Now, their 3rd slot function is SI. That's the other kind of knowing function besides NI, their 6th slot. So their 3rd slot function, their hidden agenda, is providing them where they feel attainment, right? And while certainly it also does its normal job, as I say, it's still SI. For them, the purpose of SI is to provide them this sense of attainment or fulfillment or getting paid. So SI is doing on that grounds a more specialized kind of knowing, or a more limited and specialized kind of knowing than it would if it were in a 1-2 slot, obviously. But in some sense, more specialized even than it has the capacity to do in the 4 slot. Because as the hidden agenda, it's a very selfish kind of attention, with SI being in there as well. It's doubly so, you know. It's selfish in the sense that you don't want others to help you with it. In other words, you don't want it in and of itself. You want to be responsible for attaining the thing that's good in it. So, in other words, you want to feel like your own skill in that area provided you the outcome you wanted in that area, because it feels to you like, it inherently feels to everybody like an area where they can improve. It inherently feels to everybody, additionally, an area where there's a challenge. So they don't expect themselves to necessarily do well. And expectations have so much to do with everything, right? I don't feel any accomplishment with TI stuff because I expect myself to pass all the TI tests. I can only fail with TI, basically. I can't succeed with it. It's just, that's my baseline. With FE, it's much more mysterious to me in the sense that I know I can see there's lots of room for growth. I can see that I'm not necessarily making good game time decisions. Like I can be pretty good with it back in the locker room at half and go, okay, why are we down by 40 points? Let's think about this a bit. Maybe it was screaming profanities at your guests. Could that have anything to do with it, Eric? Do you think maybe? Let's see. Okay, let's see what it says. You're right. I definitely shouldn't mention the contradiction or emphasize they're going against something they'd want to honor in theory. It's so obvious now that you say it. I'm self-sabotaging here. I don't even remember what I said, but it was really, really true. I'll drop the "I'm the Antichrist" pickup line then. Don't give up on it too quick. I mean, make sure you tried it in all its incarnations. You've probably done, "Hey, I'm the Antichrist." That one is probably not going to work. But you could try, "Hey, Antichrist." You got to shake yourself back and forth like this chick's kid, confused by that, and then you can kind of move in. Let's see. Am I ignoring? Sounds just like cognitive functions. Am I ignoring would be an example of discussing cognitive functions. I sort of look like Jesus, but I think like Odin. And I equivocate like Baal. I'm glad to hear it. They want to get wild. You just have to be the way they choose to do it. Yeah, wild. Being the way they choose so you can get wild. Can someone clue me in what system we're referencing here? It's called the system of truth, the system of justice, the system of speaking words out your mouth. It's a system that's born back at the beginning of time, before Jesus even, before Moses even, before Abraham even. It's called the truth with an F. So it makes it better than the truth. Let's see now. What's the next question? Good old sassy Southern sassafras. Oh, Sassy, you're here? Oh, yeah. Sassy came to play tonight. Sassy gonna come out and we're gonna answer some questions. Let's see what these questions say. Well, rappers, socionomics, MBTI. We talking about attentional manners, attention, ways that the people attend with their attention. You see, you understand? I don't. Let's see what. How does SE work on NFT's IV? I know it's not their immediate stack of functions. Do they have the capacity to be really good? Really good with SE. Well, Andy, I'll take over for a second. So, Sassy Southern Sassafras. You sure you don't want me to handle this? Well, I'm sure, Sassy. You're a little too sassy for this question, I think. Can you give me a cigarette at least? Yeah, I'll get you cigarettes. I need cigarettes. I need to go get cigarettes. You just remember, you're smoking for Sassy. Sassy, I'm not smoking for you. I'm just smoking with you. Good morning to that. Sassy, I told you, stay on the sidelines. I'm talking now. Where you live again? Somewhere in the ocean? Atlantis? Is that where you say she lived? I did not say she lived in Atlantis, you fucking moron. Jesus Christ. What'd you call me? The same thing I always call you. Oh, yeah. But I'm sassy. I know you're sassy. Sassy son of sassafras. Okay, but it doesn't mean she lives in Atlantis. Is she a mermaid? No, she's not a mermaid. I thought you said she was a mermaid. I said she enjoyed eating fish because she lived in Norway. It don't make you a mermaid, though. No, it doesn't. All right, sorry, everybody. Sassy is... Look, everybody. Let's all stop shitting ourselves. Sometimes you need a little bit of Adderall. Well, they say the mermaid don't eat the whale, but don't be fooled by that, because probably they do eat it. Probably. I'm thinking. At least the mermen do. They gorge on whale flesh. Okay, Sassy. Enough. I'm from Atlantis, but that was a long time ago. Well, what do you consider a long time ago? You mean, has your visa expired yet? Are you still, if you're still working under a proper work visa, and that's been stamped from both Atlantis and whatever country you're in right now, then I don't consider that a long time ago. Because I think that the last, if you're still in compliance, it can't be more than 10 years. The only one I know about HR1 visas, you know. Well, 12,000 years. What happened 12,000 years ago to Atlantis? Joseph Carpenter says, just cognitive functions, not sure functions are even real, quote unquote. MBTI puts more emphasis on the letters. Not sure functions are even real. Well, I mean, depends what you mean by real, I guess. They're certainly not physical structures in the brain, like a little, little in with a knee that kicks things around or anything. It's a way of foremost, it's a way of taxonomy, channel of attention that seem to go together, right? And we each have empirical examples in real life of attending to things in different ways. So we know that it's different to have to figure out the answer to a problem versus knowing it. If I give you a long math problem and you don't know the answer to it, that's a different process you use than if I just say, what's 9 plus 9? You go 18. You didn't have to go 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So that's the thing about that. We can acknowledge for sure, if we want to be honest about things, that thinking logically in terms of a language logic, that is to say communicative deductive logic, is a different process than feeling a strong emotion about something. And it's difficult to dispute that claim, right? It's a simple enough observation. They might occur concurrently, but the conclusions of each, to the extent that each renders a conclusion, is not necessarily going to agree. So if you learn that the ice cream shop is closed, and you were really, 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 really looking for to get some ice cream, you might be sad. And while it might be possible to divert your attention elsewhere, or cheer you up with something else, it doesn't change the fact that the failure of the ice cream store to be open made you sad. Similarly, if something is logically invalid, it is a similar absolute status of one affords. So both those things, feelings and thinking, are both modalities of being, that is to say, expressions of conscious being in some capacity or another. And they are additionally calculation metrics, that is to say, ways of concluding things or affording things a status of legitimate or illegitimate. So when we start to walk through what I'm actually claiming, and making very reasonable claims. So we start with some basic observations like we did, and we start to talk about what it means to logically critique something with language versus what it means to emotionally relate to something with feelings versus what it means to interact with a logic in a solvency-based approach, which is another alternative, and versus what it is to interact with a dynamic social system responsibly, which is another modality. And we can see how there are natural groupings for the things, because to the extent that certain modalities convey both an approach to, say, a communicative event, in other words, being an FE DOM, for example, is used to indicate that a given approach is, at a given communication event, is going to express certain values and have as certain priorities certain things, right? So that constrains, as a consequence, those natural boundaries between things that contradict each other or run afoul of each other as modalities allow us to easily enough fit certain things into one set and not into another set. Because if I'm talking about actually feeling other people's perceptions, that's going to run afoul on some level of what's most communicably defensible, which is going to be, it's just going to be a subset of the population that's won over by that. And you have to make a choice. Which do I prioritize? I can't prioritize them both because they conflict. So things that conflict with each other naturally fall into sets in that sense. If an element of FE does not conflict then with the other cognitive functions in some capacity, then it's not part of FE. It must be part of something else. It must conflict with FE then. So you see how the taxonomy is a natural one because the grammar occurs first. The grammar is exclusivity and or contraindicativeness and or inverse proportionality or proportionality or concurrency. There's a lot of different metrics you can use to break it down. But the thing is, whatever the grammar you apply, you can find empirical examples of those things, and you can find good logical arguments to explain why, for example, it's not possible to both read a book with the intent, read a complicated book and retain the information you're reading, while concurrently effectively playing soccer. You're not going to be able to do both those things concurrently. So there's an example of where concurrence becomes a criterion that you can utilize to narrow down which specific expressions of human being comprise an example of a given attentional channel. And again, you're not making any kind of weird claims or anything. You're just pointing out what's obviously true to everybody and making the obvious conclusions about it. We have to treat it in terms of speaking about the human experience, that we now have at our disposal a powerful rhetorical tool that would seem to express effectively an apparent mechanical relationship between different attentional manners, and the way that they naturally are constraining each other compels configurations of attentional manners that we call types. Now, so that begins to hint as to why it is there are only 16 types, for example. And again, it's not an unjustified claim. It's the reality that because these attentional manners constrain each other definitionally, that is to say, there's a finite but large set of human experience that cognitive functions attempts to model or explain. Okay? So it doesn't attempt to explain everything, though. But the point is, amongst those things that it does attempt to explain, it provides a link back to an inherent reason why it should be this way and not some other way, which is what purely metaphorical shit doesn't do. So the thing that is very effective for me today, that was very effective and that I have a lot of respect for because of its effectiveness, is this internal family services model. But that model does not do what cognitive functions does. There's no reason to think IFS is any better than any other such model, except for the fact that this one is more effective. And I'm only looking for effectiveness from this. I'm not looking to understand what I am. I'm looking to understand how to act, really, is what it boils down to, because I'm looking for an actual solution. I'm being very TE about this. So the all metaphor thing is a fine thing for that. But inherently in and of itself as a model, there's nothing to prefer it over anything else that you could make up. Any other metaphor like that you can make up. You can say, well, you actually have 5 kinds of people in you. You've got poop lovers, you've got self-haters and self-worshippers. And the reason I like the IFS thing is because it's simple, it makes sense, it works. It doesn't need to link anything empirically to do that because it's not positioning itself as an explanation of human experience. It's positioning itself as a tool you can use to heal attachment issues. So, big difference in thing, right? Cognitive functions, though, there are good reasons to preclude competing models from the single that ought to be embraced. And those good reasons stem from the fact that if the model is going to be defensible, it needs to be predicated on this understanding of a mechanical exclusivity or relationship definitional constraints that that helps you, that then people understand what it means to say argue from an FI perspective, what it means to argue from an FE perspective, what it means to argue from a TE perspective. Because the actual attentional manner, if we're not versed in it ourselves, we're not really going to ever experience it. Like I'm never really going to experience what it's like to have TE dom. And I'm going to be particularly weak in having any experience of FI. So, but what I have instead is what I am able to see with my senses and stuff in terms of other people's behavior and my interpretation of that through my own framework. So I can go, okay, well, this is what it looks like when other people use TE successfully. And so TE must be like this. I can deduce things about it, right? But I lost my train of thought. Okay, let's see here. What types do you think are the most? Let me go up a bit. Can you type somebody from the chat? No. I can't type somebody from the chat. I mean, no way. I need to talk to them. I need to pull on shit and see what they do with my stimuli. I need to basically do a little poking and prodding. I need to put a little pressure, so to speak, gentle, but on certain spots where I think there's a little shakiness. I need to expose them a bit in ways that hopefully they're not really being aware of how I'm exposing them so much, because people don't really want to feel exposed. They want to feel successfully understood, But, okay. What types do you think are the most predisposed to addiction? I've noticed that most NPs, myself included, Yeah. I think ENTPs and ESTPs are the most, and ESFPs. Less so ENTJs. Less so ENFPs are a little less so, but they're up there too. Because I'd say basically your action types are most predisposed. Your NE-DOMs, your SE-DOMs, and then after that it would probably be the judging types, TI-DOMs and FI-DOMs. And then after that, the knowledge DOMs, SI and NI DOMs, and then after that, last would be the interface DOMs. That's what I would guess. The Great Deluge. I need a cigarette. But the brain scans. How do we know it's actually happening in the brain and we aren't misattributing them, though? What am I attributing them to, Joseph Carpenter? That's the problem with that question. I'm not attributing anything to anything. I'm saying, here's what happens in human experience. We know these attentional channels do exist. We can distinguish them from each other because we can determine which one is part of which class by testing to see if it conflicts with the other ones. The ones that don't conflict are all parked together, and the ones that do, they turn out to be not anything really that we're including in this map that doesn't work like this. It doesn't have some sort of exclusivity relationship with some of the other ones, except as said that it doesn't have that exclusivity problem. So they fall into those categories neatly and naturally, which is indicative that the map is probably mapping well. It doesn't, when things start to fall into place, just like boom, 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 like that. It's a good idea that, okay, well, this is probably what the map ought to look like. But the thing is, remember that that's what it is. It's a map and a rhetorical tool. It's a lexicon you can use to explain and understand why people behave the way they do, or what a given instance of behavior means, so to speak, in reference to that person's overall being, instead of just in reference to yourself or in reference to the circumstance. Certainly, as a lexicon of terms and taxonomy shorthands, which are ways of just sort of compacting information into more useful or operationalizable forms, it's certainly powerful in doing that. And the alternative is you don't really have an alternative, because the alternatives that you might employ, they all have either a good reason to be preferred less than this model I'm presenting as a map, or are arbitrary. And what makes it arbitrary is it entirely metaphor, or are you describing actual human experience? We begin with actual human experience. In this instance, we are beginning with simple and basic observations that are very, very difficult to dispute. So we know that certain kinds of attention are different from each other, and we know that certain kinds of attention are exclusive of each other, and we know that certain other kinds can be done concurrently, right? So I can drive my car and be thinking hard about some song lyrics I'm writing in my head or something, let's say. And it's possible to do both those things. The SE of the car driving, we'll call it's part of my attention to driving the car SE. Let's just tag it that, okay? Note, I'm not attributing anything to anything here. I'm saying it's true that there are two distinct manners of attention going on concurrently when I'm driving the car and making up song lyrics in my head. It's pretty difficult to dispute that. The weird claim is, well, the thing is, thoughts occur in a frame. They don't occur in a vacuum. I'm just going to go down and do Joseph Carpenter here for a second. I got to go through all this fucking Joseph Carpenter shit. Okay. With math, we don't say this is a math function minus. We might use math plus reading plus visual plus any other number of functions. Okay, well, with math, we do use functions, though. So, for example, 4 plus 5, plus is the function, and 4 is a value, and 5 is a value, right? Those are different things. It's not like 4 plus 5 is different than 4, 7, 5. The first thing has 2 numbers and a function. The second thing is 1 number that's 3 digits. Modalities of being. So you simply mean thoughts, right? But cognitive functions make the claim that we know where certain thoughts are coming from. It seems misleading. Cognitive functions doesn't make the claim that we know where certain thoughts are coming from. What you're ignoring here is that thoughts always occur within a frame. And the cognitive function first of all, thoughts are take multiple forms of manifestation. So the kind of thinking I'm doing right now is introverted thinking, what we're going to call it, which is to say I'm deductively and objectively analyzing what you're saying. Now, I may have an interest here. I'd prefer to be right or withstand any whatever scrutiny you have, but I won't, by nature and by habit, by long habit, I won't sit here and if you get a good point and it seems like the winning point on something, I won't try to dispute it or anything. In other words, I'm not attached to my position enough to have that impact my decision making about the legitimacy of it. And the reason specifically for that is because my relationship between my interested and disinterested calculus is very heavily balanced towards the disinterested calculus and heavily against the interested calculus. So we can choose to ignore then that as we start to look at those different things, there emerge relationships not just between, say, an interested and disinterested calculus, but a relationship between an interested calculus and a singular determinate calculus. The other thing is we can look to language in general, that is to say, the way people communicate in text, let's say. And we can break down, as we start to read broadly different kinds of texts and different kind of advocacies, that people advocate within different implicit frames. And those frames break down to basically a singularity kind of frame, which says we're looking for things to collapse to the most determinate factor and have a single answer course of action. It can frame out in we need multiple different courses of action or new courses of action. That would be in any kind of a frame. We would call it that. But note that these frames are distinct and existent prior to cognitive function, in my understanding. So I was a debate coach before I was a cognitive function person. We also have frames that exist naturally, again, that stress the social aspect of it. You know, when I get debaters, sometimes there are certain kinds of debaters, probably your FE types, who essentially want to talk about what's popular and what the people want and how the government should respect the people's wishes and make arguments about but there's a danger for these people who are suffering and just general sort of virtue signaling and stuff, right? There are people who are naturally drawn to lots of those arguments. But note that the frame exists in debate without any cognitive functions involved, okay? And the same sort of thing with authenticity. There's actually debate critiques that occur in the status quo that are about multiple modalities of learning and how it's important to include a poem about your feelings in the debate round if you want to genuinely be diverse in your educational channels and therefore vote for us because we read a poem and they didn't. That kind of bullshit. But yes, it does occur in debate. This frame exists again prior to cognitive functions, as does a frame of experience and looking to past events as forebearers of information about the future, as is looking at the, and most of all in argumentation, it's looking at the soundness of the argumentation, that is to say, how the various premises and conclusions and points being made by each party withstand scrutiny against themselves and the other points the person's making, and against any external points that are presented as rebuttals. So that would be a TI approach, which is what I'm using. Anyway, the thing is, these kind of frames exist independently. And a TE approach is going to be a utilitarian approach. TI is much more a principled approach. So those are the two most common frames in debate, are TE and TI. But that's exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about the fact that there are a finite number of frames that are consistently used by people, whether they know it or not, mostly not, implicitly used, and it's used in argumentation of all levels, and it appears again and again and again. Cognitive functions can be understood simply then as what kinds of arguments disagree with what other kind of arguments. Of course, that's not all they are, because remember, we're talking fundamentally not about events of language, but about instances of human existence. And those instances of human existence may include thoughts, but they include a lot of things other than thoughts. So there are modalities or channels of attention that aren't thoughts. For example, digging a hole. Digging a hole is a process of being that you are experiencing moving through time. You might be in your head thinking other thoughts, but your being is still digging a hole. And it is digging a hole outside of, independent of, whether or not you are thinking any thoughts at all. The weird claim is the assumption that it takes language and umbrellas it under certain functions, like basically butchers language and meaning, assumes a lot, basically. Well, you've not established that. You just made that claim. So right now I'm using an introverted thinking approach, which says you have the burden to establish that claim with some sort of substantiation. You can't simply make it and expect us to all take it seriously. And the claim's outrageous to say that it butchers language and meaning when it actually provides insight into language and meaning. You're treating yourself as though you're not an open system. You cannot take in new information, learn it, and apply it as is useful to you. Rather, you will be enslaved by it or must dismiss it entirely. Now, that's not the case, so you're operating on a false premise, and that's bullshit. Let's go on to the next thing. I find the map limited. Well, I mean, if you found it unlimited, it wouldn't be useful, right? If I said, here's a map to how to get to my house. Now, keep in mind, it's to scale perfectly, like 1-to-1 scale. So, I mean, I know you're 3 miles away and everything. That's why this piece of paper is 3 miles big, because I want to make sure I include all the detail. So you'll know, like this tree here, it's about a block and a half from your house. It often does have squirrels on there. I wanted to make sure I included that. And look at all these nests up here in this tree right here, because I noticed those as well. And I try to get absolutely everything onto the map, because Jesus Christ, I wouldn't want it to be useful at all. Remember, it's not just a map, it's a rhetorical tool. Yes, it's a model, and so we can check it for accuracy by various means. Can we absolutely falsify conclusions about any individual's type? Not yet, but we can absolutely falsify the model, or fail to falsify the model. If we take certain angles of attack, we can test it, right? So the number one test is, what have you heard so far that you've actually disputed or can dispute? Or say, no, that doesn't make sense. That's not true. I don't. Oh, so, thank you, whoever gave me $20. I really appreciate it. Who was that? Let me see. Tyler Peterson. Thank you. You're awesome. Where was I? Yeah. So generate some. So rebut things I'm actually saying. Right now, you're attacking the idea of cognitive functions as you understood it coming in, or as you thought it was vulnerable coming in. But instead, attack what I'm saying. Rebut my statements. If you can't successfully rebut them, then at that point, you probably should think, okay, let me rethink the arguments I'm bringing here. Because at the moment, if you're going to say, I find the map limited, well, that's not much of a critique. Yeah, but any free will overrides any basic assumptions about functions. Why? Why is free will independent of functions? My understanding of free will is, in fact, when one understands one's attentional habits and configuration, and how one's being is in fact defined by a set of attentional relationships, a set of relationships between your manners of attention, that I am an ENTP in the sense that I am an example of somebody who is ideationally acting foremost and doing so with a companion tool of deductive reasoning. So that's what I am. I'm not always that, but I am doing that a great amount of the time. And I do that in a great amount of context, more so than the context would recommend, I'm sure. These are not claims that are unsubstantiated. These are not claims that are arbitrary. I can demonstrate. I'm demonstrating it right now. And the reality is, my woman, Kimberly, she doesn't think like this. She doesn't think like this at all. She doesn't prioritize argumentational scrutiny as the number one criterion for evaluating things when dealing with the world and things that come up. When you start bringing arguments in, I immediately parse them apart, explain why you're wrong, well, do all that shit, right? Whereas she would be utterly flummoxed. Now, you could say this is best explainable by the fact that she's not as smart as me. But how is that explanation useful in any meaningful sense? You're just saying, I'm defining the quality of logical parsing as intelligence, and saying she is not as smart as you because she doesn't logically parse as well as you. And I'm saying, well, what does she do instead? And the answer is she parses out according to social dynamics and understanding other people's perceptions and stuff like that. So those are, would you prefer a world in which we don't represent those at all, or whether we attempt to represent them as well as possible? And if we were to attempt to represent it as well as possible, and if somebody did attempt to do so and they were to succeed, what would that look like? Do you have a success criterion for successfully mapping out the way that human beings be as packages of habitual personality rather than just randomly occurring people in the same body, you know? I mean, yeah, I see free will as basically manifesting from being aware of your habitual responses and being able to pull back and say, maybe this isn't the right time to respond how I always do. Because if you actually do any sort of objective self data gathering, you'll realize that you respond in very predictable ways to the extent that you understand what ways not you are like. For example, you say here, you might think someone is using a function, you might ascribe a certain thought to that function, but to any observer, they might ascribe it differently. The thing is, of course, Joseph Carpenter, is what I said before stands. It's not possible right now to falsify somebody's type, but it is possible to falsify the understanding of typology in general, and or to explain which understanding of typology withstands the most scrutiny, or which can be rebutted. So note that you're still not responding to anything I've said, right? You say, I made a point that answered something of yours, that responded to what you said, that addressed it. And you said, yeah, but, which are two of my least favorite words. Yeah, but any free will overrides any basic function. Now, but I didn't bring up free will, so you're simply launching another neg argument. You've dropped the previous chain because it got dropped, because it got destroyed. But there's no acknowledgement or learning from that process. You haven't said, okay, now first let me acknowledge that my previous line of argumentation was wrong. I guess you might say that's what your yeah but is, but that's not what that is. So first, let me do that. Now let me try let me try a different attack. That's not a yeah but. That's a okay. You and I are both doing the same thing, Eric. If you and I were both doing the same thing, this is what you'd be able to say. You'd say, "We're doing the same thing, Eric. We're both trying to parse away things that don't make sense to get down to what does." So instead of yeah, but you respond with something like, "Okay, well that's good. We can eliminate that possible argument chain that I've just floated. Now, what about this other possible attack?" That's the difference between dialectic and rhetoric. Now, whether or not you're rhetorical in this fashion because you're a youngish TI user or whether because you're a TE person who's antagonistic to TI, I don't know. But we'll continue and see what else you have to say. You might think someone, oh, we read that one already. In other words, they might have used their free will or done something outside of their cognitive norms, and observer would misattribute it to something else. Well, the thing is, every individual experiences some stretch of minutes, hours, whatever, of their life in each of the 8 functions. And probably very few of those minutes are spent with a single function in isolation. It's not impossible to have just 2 functions going at one time, which is to say it's very plausible to imagine oneself, for example, feeling very strongly emotion about a loss while concurrently having some thoughts about what one ought to do to pull oneself out of this state of despair or something. That would be an example. We would call an example of somebody exercising a FI attentional channel, that is to say, feeling the weight of the loss, the inherent value of it, and then seeking solvency of the pain. That's a normal FITE pair. It's why they're paired together, right? Is that when you feel strongly that you want something or there's a problem that needs to be solved, then the best pairmate for that is the way that people deal with logic's non-communicative, which is to say, to solve the problem. So when you say they might have used their free will or done something outside their cognitive, everybody's using willful intentionality to some extent. The question of whether or not it's free will is a trickier one. There are some things that are more reflexive. For example, if you run up behind me and startle me and I jump, I didn't choose to do that. That wasn't an intentional behavior. It wasn't a willful behavior either. It was an involuntary behavior. Now, if I do something where I'm walking over there and I've hung a picture on the wall and it turns out that it pulls the nail down and rips out a piece of the wall, that's a willful behavior, but not an intentional one. And intentionality refers to attaining the outcome you intended, right? Cognitive functions do not ascribe a box that people must behave in. It's not what they do. They describe to a person and tell them, here's the box in which you're currently behaving as though you are required to stay in. I hope you, like me, learn from this particular lexicon of language that being inadequately questioning about our own values, why they are our values and where they are, and whether or not they really are superior to other people's values, and how much they play out as an implicit value in what we're saying without our even knowing it. Awarenesses of those things provides you an incredible realm of understanding possibilities thereafter, because like right now, you're fairly locked into your value frame here. which is like this. The meaning and ideas you attributing are based on subjects of your own experience. So this is an implicit valuing against experience-based learning. Now, keep in mind, the things I'm beginning with is observations. This is your first real rebuttal, really. You're saying, my observations are just based on my own experience. Well, first of all, remember, none of us actually has anything but our own experience, okay? It is possible we could experience somebody else's scientific paper, for example, and say, well, that's outside of our experience, so it's fine. But it's also perfectly reasonable with me to say, it's not just true for me that figuring something out is different than knowing the answer. It's true for people outside of me as well. To the extent that there is anything that is not my experience, the claim that people have a different way of knowing than figuring out is, and saying that that is universal or external to me or a part of the human experience in general, not just specific to me, that I'm not the only one who's had this experience, is at least as defensible, if not more, than any sort of scientific data you might cite. Nobody who was genuinely trying to engage the ideas would dispute it. It's your own introverted thinking construction. The map is limiting because the system is based on only you yourself are aware of, not reality on a whole. It's my own what system? My own what construction? That doesn't mean anything, right? It's just, those words don't mean anything. Are you using cognitive functional language to tell me how pointless and useless cognitive functional language is? And helping me to understand that my thing ought not be valued as a good explanation because it's my own TI construction. What sort of ideational construction would you prefer? And how would you express to me that distinction without using cognitive functions in a way that could meaningfully fit into an effective, accurate, and as far as we can tell, preferable to all alternatives thus far presented map, except for the fact that you have your own thing where you want to convey your value here. Your values are very clearly coming through. Note that one of those values is not dialectic. Note as well that one of those values is not an attempt to find anything here that you can make use of. It's simply what you're making use of it you're trying to make use of it as like a whipping boy to show your, I guess, intellectual robustness or something. Unfortunately, this is not a place where you're going to succeed in getting very far in that, because foremost, you're wrong fundamentally, and you're wrong for lots of reasons. But second of all, it's very unlikely you put as much time and energy into thinking about all the possible arguments that might be made about this topic as I have. So that puts you at a disadvantage. And then lastly, even if you were statistically in the very top 10% of people who know how to argue, you still wouldn't be able to keep up with it even if I were taking it just as an argumentational challenge. So it's an ill-advised, I guess you'd say, what's it called, sally, ill-advised sally forth into enemy lands, I guess, because you're going to do it. You don't want to take too many losses before you determine, like, retreat. Okay, but I appreciate it a lot, that Joseph Carpenter. That's why I'm paying all the attention to you and not to anything else right now, because I like the Piao Piao. Like I said, is one idea versus another. Say you use introverted thinking and interface with somebody else and notice they're using a function, but maybe they never use it. Well, like I've indicated on ample occasions before, I present the definitions I present and the understandings of them I present, and I provide as many possible testable elements of the thing that can be generalizable, like look for this, look for this, look for this. I say, I'm calling this SI. You might say, but people don't agree with necessarily if that's SI or not. Well, if you build it from the ground up, as I have, where I say, what do things in an actual system dynamics do? We've got agents in a system that put information, get information, receive information. We have an actual model that works, that proves that works, which is called the internet. Now, that's how an actual ecosystem is modeled successfully as a virtual ecosystem, is by delegating out different kinds of tasks to different that agents can do. You know, they're functions, right? So when we begin with that, so we go, okay, well, this is how actual systems are actually modeled, so let's do it that way. And then we afford the various components in the system, the various things it should simulate. So according to my system, it begins with a prime directive that everything must have in a system. If it's really going to simulate, it's got to have some sort of directive, right? So the prime directive is conforming expectations to reality. We can define those terms clearly enough. We can talk about the functions as different expressions of put, get, and receive on two planes of human understanding, namely a representational plane and an actual experiential plane. That we have those two planes is not in any dispute. The word apple is different than actual apple is not in any dispute. They're basic observations that you're only being petulant to the extent that you want to dispute them at all, because they're so obviously so, or else nothing is so. So if we want to do any kind of meaningful work with words, which is very possible to do, then we have to want to have tools at our disposal. If we're actively rejecting tools that are being presented to us that would be very useful because we're not the expert in that tool right now, and we don't like it, or because it's inconsistent with our preferred, our valued modalities, so it's inconsistent with the kind of tool that we like to use, well, then it's just us expressing our bias to our attentional habits. If you prefer to call them attentional matters and cognitive functions, be my guest. If you don't like the word cognitive functions, but when we recognize that, okay, so some of these functions are receive functions or no functions, what comprises that sort of behavior in the system, it further constrains what is correctly called one thing and what is incorrectly called one thing. Once we've established the things that are knowing, that are, in other words, receiving functions, then they do that thing. So then things that do that thing qualify as those things, and that falls under that name. That's how things get named. It's not arbitrary to name things, and I didn't name them anyway. I didn't. Your point is that I might misattribute it. Well, sure, I'm wrong sometimes. I'm not always right. If we have strong definitional origin of a function, then develop strong definitional attributes, then as have said, functions to fall under its definitional parameters, which attributes such the function is defined. But I have very limited knowledge. The discussion. I changed my opinion on it. I just find it limiting and not an accurate representation of the mind. Why would you find it limiting, though? In what regard does it limit you? Not an accurate representation of the mind. It's not attempting to represent the mind. It's attempting to represent human being through channels of attention and understanding the identity of people or personality of people based on that attentional configuration. It's not trying to represent the mind. Let's see. You use real science, huh? The element of a person that enables them to be aware of the world and their experiences, to think, to feel, the faculty of consciousness and thought. Yeah, it's not trying to explain. Well, I mean, I guess it's explaining most of that stuff. Enables you to be aware of the world. I mean, it doesn't, cognitive functions doesn't go into that. Why would argumentation prove functions? Well, okay, what? Why would argumentation prove functions? They either exist or they don't. Okay, well, it's like this. If a week from tomorrow is Wednesday, then a week from today is Tuesday. Now, you might tell me in no uncertain terms, and be on some level, I guess, correct, that there's no such thing as Tuesday and Wednesday, that all days are the same, that there's nothing about any given day that we can look to indicate that this is in fact Tuesday. I have examined the trees, the sunshine, the clouds, the air, the passage of light across the ground as the day passes. There is not a goddamn Tuesday to be found anywhere here. Tuesday is not real. Tuesday doesn't exist. Okay, but I'm still right that if a week from tomorrow is Wednesday, then a week from today is Tuesday. Because those terms are operationalized concepts. They are concepts of chunks of time progressing in a 7-day circle around. Now, that's much less grounded of a thing to exist than cognitive functions, right? But the key thing about it is it has a very simple mechanics to it, which is it's ordinally repeating those 7 days over and over again. So even if you don't believe in cognitive functions at all, just like even if you don't believe in the days of the week at all, because you can't empirically establish them at all, you'd have to agree that provided we're using the language of days of the week, or provided we're using the language of cognitive functions, that there's some calculations about them that are objectively so, and some calculations that are incorrect. Now, it's also true that there are currently in the cognitive function community, there's currently a period of disparate positionings on it. It's the sort of thing that allows people to make up a bunch of hooey and throw it on top of it and think of it as something that it's not, right? So that's true that there's a lot of hooey around it, but there's a lot of hooey around quantum physics too. You know, most of the things you read that people talk about quantum physics that aren't sciencey shit are just magical thinking. There's a lot of talk about comets, for example. Comets causing catastrophes and shit. Well, astronomy doesn't become then a pseudoscience, does it? Just because people think comets cause earthquakes? I don't think that renders astronomy invalid. You know, the point being that you've got to critique the thing that's actually in front of you. If you want to do a legitimate job of critiquing something, you can't just critique straw man and shit. You can't reduce the thing that you're talking about to a caricature of itself and then say, this thing's just a caricature. What garbage. That's what you're trying to do. But the thing you're talking about is much more robust. If you were to actually address my points directly, you'd find yourself struggling for things to say. So instead, you shift ground and just make new points about random shit. Let's see. Bye, Zandy. How long have we been going? Oh, shit, I'm arguing. That means shit runs late. I'm arguing. I got plenty of energy to argue. I'm not saying people don't agree if it's SI or TI or NI or not. Nothing wrong with having a model. My problem is you're treating the model as your own personal map. What do you mean? I mean, every person who has a model either justifies it successfully or doesn't. Every person who ascribes to a model, whether it's Hume's or BB's or mine or anybody else's, has a justification for doing so. So the question is, how do we compare those justifications against each other and decide whose justifications are best? And what I'm telling you is, mine wins on the merits. It's most argumentationally sound. You can dispute that, but you don't seem to be able to give me any examples of it. You don't seem to be able to dispute anything I'm actually saying directly. You just keep shifting around and making general vague statements about irrelevant shit that doesn't invalidate anything I'm saying. So, I mean, at that point, you just got to go, oh, I guess I'm wrong. That's what you should be saying at this point. All right, let's see what he says. Heights and Jenny, this has been going on for a while now, but I don't know, maybe late for it or maybe not. I'm currently in the midst of throwing down with Joseph Carpenter here for a bit. It's not that I don't believe in the functions, it's that how the functions have been ordered and described I find misleading and or limits what the brain is capable of. Well, first of all, cognitive functions doesn't claim to be exhaustive. It doesn't claim to explain everything in human experience. And second of all, you keep saying things are limiting in some capacity, but you haven't given me any explanation of why or how a cognitive function understanding of human ontology would be limiting. I'd need to understand. You have to give me an example of that. When I say I'd use science, I simply mean it needs more empirical evidence to support it. Then you're misunderstanding what it is, right? You don't understand what an attentional channel is or an intentional manner. Because I'm not trying to explain why or how it is that people pay attention in different ways. I'm not trying to explain how or why it is that those attentional manners are objectively, descriptively related to each other in ways other than something other than unrelatedness. Like, in other words, proportionality, inverse proportionality, concurrent, exclusivity, whatever. They've got those kind of relationships with them. If you want to falsify that statement, then explain to me what you think is a way of paying attention. Or if you think there is no way of paying attention, that a person always pays attention the same way. Explain to me, falsify the observation I'm making. When I say that people pay attention in certain ways, which necessitates they don't pay attention in other ways, falsify that claim. I mean, if you're having problems with that one, then falsify it. Make an argument as to why it's a bad claim. It's a simple observation. People are able to make observations of fact that should be believed in and agreed with by everybody. That's obviously one of them. So you've got a steep rhetorical slope to go up against it. You need to justify why we shouldn't agree with that statement. Free will destroys your health. You don't seem to understand, Joseph Carpenter. I'm not saying people are trapped in their boxes. You are doing your best to demonstrate that that's not always the case, and that people really are trapped in their boxes, as you are really trapped in your box right now. But that's fine. I'm not saying anything about there's no free will. When did I say anything about there not being free will? I've already explained there are several kinds of understandings of free will, including willful and intentional, and non-willful or involuntary. So just ignoring that I've already addressed that and pretending as though I didn't and just repeating it, it's probably a bad idea because it's going to make you look kind of like you're grasping at straws, No, I didn't make up the term intentional manner. I read that as somebody else's definition of cognitive function one time. I thought it was the best definition I ever read, so I used it ever since. Because that's the thing, Joseph Carpenter. I'm not making the mistake of saying, oh, this can't be as good because I came up with it. Or that can't be as good because I don't like that guy and he came up with it. I'm actually doing the argumentational work. As a debate coach, I'm well practiced in it, of not having any interest in the arguments, but always looking for the one that's actually the best on its merits. So the reason my definitions are what they are, not because I made them all up, because the definitions I've chosen are the best definitions. And the reason they're the best definitions is because they withstand the most argumentational scrutiny. And the reason that is the most significant factor here is because the reality, what we're talking about, is a lexicon, a rhetorical tool, a taxonomy, a model, lots of different things. And we have meaningful ways of critiquing those kind of things. Those things are meaningful, and we have meaningful ways of critiquing them. So we can apply those. We don't have to resort to arbitrary ground shifty nonsense like you're doing here. You can use real critiques. It's possible. So you don't really have an excuse for not doing it. Why I shouldn't agree with attentional manners. Obeying functions presupposes nobody obeys functions. A person is comprised of functions. A person comprises their attentional, their expressions of attention over time. So, in other words, Eric today lasted from when I woke up. A conscious, awake Eric today lasted from when I woke up till when I go to bed. Okay? A certain finite number of hours. Now, I spent a very small amount of that time thinking about stuff that happened a long time ago. Spent a very small amount of that time cleaning my ears. Spent a very small amount of that time fixing things. Most of the time I spent talking. But wait a second. A lot of people aren't like that. And he's talking about nothing but these weird abstract ideas and it's like he spends hours on the internet just like thrashing Joseph Carpenter around the room and feels like he's accomplishing something for some reason. Plenty of people would judge this way. So it's nice to have a framework or a scaffolding, an intellectual scaffolding, through which we can understand how those kinds of responses to the same thing that can be in contradiction reflect both sets of values and ways of paying attention. The way I pay attention to fix a broken doorknob is different than the way I pay attention to fix your broken arguments. This is very easy for me because you're not making good arguments in the first place, and I'm very good at doing this thing that I'm doing. Plus, I know the subject very well, and in general, I've encountered these kind of arguments before, which are just basically expressions of TE bias mostly. But it can also just be a young pedantic TI. It's hard to say. And that's kind of one of the points you're making is that, people can't determine definitively whether any given act of speech, whether any given locutionary action or physical action is representative of something specific inside that the rest of us can't see. We don't necessarily get to know what the person's motivations are, blah, blah, blah. Except the reality is we don't need ever to correctly identify any instance of an intentional manner, because we don't see the intentional manner. We see the display, which may or may not correlate with its typical intentional manner. But what you're not accounting for is the fact that I can interact with people. So I can pull and push in ways that they can't game. I can test certain things have skills associated with them so directly that you can determine a person's native comfort in a given attentional area very definitively. Now, it requires interactivity, and that's not very repeatable and scientific and stuff like that. But I already conceded at the outset that we cannot falsify the person's type. The best we can do is offer a real legitimate critique and analysis of the model you have before you. Now, that's what you've utterly failed to do. You've simply attempted dark alley after dark alley, only to discover knife-laden thugs at the end of each of them, and then still try to walk away and claim as though, well, but it's better for me. My way's still better though. No, sorry. So we do have the mechanisms at our disposal to actually critique these things. You've got a responsibility if you want to argue seriously about the topic. If you're not just trolling, you might be. Even if you are, it's okay in this instance, because I've enjoyed the opportunity to pontificate about this on and on. Regardless, you've got the responsibility to actually be responsive. If you're not going to be responsive to me, that is to say, if you're not going to address my arguments that I'm actually making, then there's no point in responding to your ongoing claims, because I would hope not just to withstand your negationary attack, although I'm willing to do that, but if you want me to think that you're seriously interested at all in being right or in making progress in your own understanding, then you'll have to learn from the fact that your arguments don't withstand scrutiny, and mine do, and try to take away from that something that you can remember next time in going into a comparable situation. No, I'm not familiar with Rainieri's revised type theory. It doesn't claim to account for them, so it's not limiting at all. It is true that if somebody mistakenly for no reason says, you know what, I'm going to believe cognitive functions explain everything, that would be dumb. Just like it would be bad if people drove their car when they went swimming in the swimming pool instead of just going into the swimming trunk. They drove their car there. That's not an appropriate place to drive your car. That's what makes swimming pools so limiting, is you might drive your car into it. What makes cars so limiting is they can go into swimming pools. It doesn't make them limiting. It makes some people shitty drivers. I mean, free will is indicated by the fact that we have conditionality, the fact that we can have antecedents and consequences. We can consider possibilities. If this, then that, and if this, then that. Now let's pretend we did this. What would happen? Now let's pretend we did this. What would happen? That proves free will right there. In other words, being able to consider ahead of time possible outcomes and make predictions about them that are better than random, and have anticipations and expectations that one can make efforts to make align more closely to reality, proves that one has the capacity for willful action. Whether or not it's free, there are varying degrees of freedom, as I've already indicated. Who am I answering? Oh yeah, sorry, Tyler. I need to switch back to my nice voice from my scoldy voice. My bad. I'll remember that. Function police is a branch of the type police that makes sure people obey their functions. Listen, Joseph Carpenter. Hey, Carpenter. you need to obey your function right now, okay? This shit you're pulling is not useful. It's not efficient. You get out there and you make a windmill with a mule to grind our grain, okay? Shouldn't you be like doing some empirical tests on your introverted thinking castle you've constructed to prove it rather than just practicing armchair philosophy? Fuck you. I got time for empirics. Empirics is bitch work. That was fun. Okay. I think this has gone on long enough. Obeying functions. Hooey and hogwash. Hogwash and hooey. We can't pay attention to everything at once, so there's attentional manners. The TI construction is a very basic and necessary one. I agree with you, Chen. I agree with you because you're siding with me, mostly probably. But I also because I'm right, so that's why you're agreeing with me, which is why I'm agreeing with you for siding with me. It doesn't have to account for that. It's the job of other disciplines, sciences, behavioral psychology, and Negrum, etc. Having limits is actually a good thing. Right, it doesn't limit you. It's just it doesn't try to attempt to be unlimited. You know, one time Jack in the Box attempted to release an unlimited cheeseburger. They had tried the ultimate cheeseburger, and they decided to up their game and go with the unlimited cheeseburger. But they had to put a limit on it. It got taller than the building itself, and they said that's tall enough. We're putting a limit on this. So they still called it the unlimited cheeseburger, but look up Cricket Brightpad. Okay, I'll look up Cricket Brightpad. Anyway, but they had to put an asterisk next to it saying some limits may apply. Well, just like, originally they had the ultimate cheeseburger, but somebody pointed out that it was never the last cheeseburger to be served in a given day. So that's when they decided to change its name to the penultimate cheeseburger because, they could establish that it was the second to last cheeseburger of the day, provided the day is defined as the next ending at the next cheeseburger, which most days are, of course. How else would a day be defined? I don't know. Why would anybody try to define a day differently? I mean, that's not true, Joseph Carpenter. You can't. You can't sit around in 98. You can't come up with anything like this at all. The shit you're coming up with is trash. You come up with that shit. So if anybody can do it, you do it, Joseph Carpenter. Well, what are you accomplishing? How many fucking things have you done of any significance at all? Just to come around here and tell me that what I need to be doing and why we shouldn't take me seriously because I'm just an armchair philosopher, blah, 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 blah. That sounds like a hater moron just spewing hate is what it sounds like. I don't know if you actually are that or not, but that's what it sounds like. I mean, you need to go get yourself a penultimate cheeseburger is what it sounds like. You're hungry, you're hangry, you're Uncle Jur and you're mangy in your wrongness. So, take that. Sorry, but you earned it. Because we can, like I said, there's a finite set and naturally occurring because of the remember system dynamics? How we actually have a way of understanding system dynamics called, you have vectors, objects, fields. You know, agents have certain kinds of actions and not others. And you can redefine objects and fields and stuff. You know how computers, programs, and shit work? Like, we begin with the fact that agents put, get, receive information, or have handshakes of information between different things, like interfacing. So we go, okay, well, this we know is a good way to model how agents behave in a system. I've already answered this question. Why are you ignoring me? Why would you do that? Why would you ignore me? Are you ashamed of acknowledging the answer? Or what? Don't ignore me. Don't make me repeat myself for no reason except that you don't like the first answer because it's too definitively correct and your proof shows you too definitively wrong. It's just weak sauce. Empirics is TE people's job. We just need the kind of TE people that don't go, why not have 500 functions? I don't mind that question. The thing is, I had a perfectly good answer to it, which says it's predicated on the fact that there are 4 modalities of engagement that an agent may do as an object on a field in a system with system dynamics. He didn't respond to it, just ignored it, you know? So the reason there are not 500 is because of the exclusivity relations I've talked about that are implicit to the things outside of a cognitive function model. We can verify them in debate frames. There are the equivalent frames in debate. Now, most of them we don't see very often because nobody really makes FI arguments very often unless they ran that policy K or something. But like I said, what do we do if we want to understand that this is a good, sound model? We see where are the links empirically to its expression in the world in the status quo outside of this, and do we see correlates like that? That's one way. That's a simple way we can do it. A more complicated way is we can test it against alternatives. But I mean, that involves a lot of alternative testing, right? But the best way, the single best way is we can ask questions. Note what you're not doing. Not really. Not real questions. If you're asking real questions, you'd be wanting to better understand my position so you can critique it. Instead, you want to be allowed to create a position and call it mine, and then attack that position and think you've done some sort of work. Of course, you're not doing any meaningful argumentational work, and that is why you fail. Let's see. I don't have a TI castle I need to clean and upkeep. Well, okay, then you should be better at fucking up other people's. You know, do a better job of fucking up my castle. You're doing a shitty ass job of it. The nice thing about being a castle upkeep and cleaner is I like it when people come to test it, give the old white glove test. What I don't like is when it passes with flying colors and then they write a scathing review because they're so hatery. That's what you're trying to do. So I don't mind your scrutiny at all. What I don't like is what a shitty job you're doing of it. Like arguments like this, nature has its own TI rules. I don't have to make one up. Huh? Are we supposed to prefer? I don't care how many characters you're limited to. You can say cogent statements. I mean, you may be limited in the amount of statements you can make, but you have successfully made quite a few of them, and you've chosen in each of them to ignore things that would be productively responsive, to ignore points where you could learn something and realize the wrongness of your ways, ignored points where you could have meaningfully asked me questions in order to try to pin me down on something where you could make a good point. Instead, you've just run around like a tantruming toddler screaming random shit. with no notion of what actually ought to be understood about the thing, and yet a weirdly misplaced smugness that seems to suggest you know best. Like, rolling in here pedantically about this is ill-advised, to say the least. I mean, I think that's obvious to you at this point, but you probably, I don't know, maybe you just didn't think of that ahead of time or something, or maybe you thought you're gonna win, or I don't know what you thought. I guess, or maybe you knew in advance that you loved the flavor of your own wrongness shoved down deep into the back of your throat. If you already knew you loved that and were seeking it, well, then that's fine too. Anyway, I gotta go. This has been 3 hours now. This is plenty long for a live stream. Thanks for all being here. Thank you for Joseph Carpenter for providing a fun activity. And sorry for ignoring everybody else while I was thrashing on Joseph there. He totally deserved it. TE, suck my dick. As if.